Thanks for joining us on the Red Pill Analytics YouTube channel, where you can choose to see data differently. My name's Stewart Bryson. I'm an owner and co-founder of Red Pill Analytics. You can see some of the social media outlets. If you want to follow me there, that'd be great. I'd appreciate it. So this is the second video in our Checkmate tutorial series. So previously we discussed how to take an OBI-EE project and get it committed into source control. And I demonstrated using our Checkmate application how you could point our Checkmate app to an OBI-EE server. You could do that either on Windows or Linux. I demonstrated using Windows. Point it to an OBI-EE server, grab the metadata repository, grab the presentation catalog, commit that into source control as XML. And I didn't really go into the multi-user development side. I'm going to get to that in a subsequent video. But today, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the back-end processes, or at least what we call continuous delivery, continuous integration and delivery. And you can see a CI/CD server there. Today I'm going to be demonstrating Bamboo, which is part of the Atlassian suite. And downstream from that, you can see our Checkmate libraries. So those are Java compiled libraries that allow the CI/CD server to communicate with both OBI-EE command line utilities, APIs, etc., but also interact directly with an OBI-EE server. But instead of really interacting with the OBI server, at least for today, I wanted to add another element to our architecture diagram. I realized I left that out. My apologies if you watched the previous video. But that's the idea of publishing, or at least taking the artifacts that we have from source control, building those and publishing them. So what that process looks like is in source control, as I mentioned, we have primarily XML content for our metadata repository and for our catalog. And occasionally we're going to want to pull that content out and we're going to want to move it to additional environments. Sometimes though that involves migration or promotion, as we call it with Checkmate. But it also, we want to be able to use those artifacts for regression testing. If we want to compare our current build of OBI content to a previous build, compare differences and see where we might have introduced regressions. So the first thing we have to do as part of that process is to build those binaries. So when we commit changes to source control, we want that continuous integration server to listen to source control, detect that there's been changes, and go ahead and build our binaries as part of a back-end process so that we can deploy to downstream environments at will. But we don't want to have to go back to source control every time we want to do that. So we want to publish those artifacts. We zip them up, publish them to an artifact repository, or sometimes called a binary repository. And that's typically using a Maven standard. So we publish those to a server where we keep them nice, we keep the zipped content versioned over time. So today I'm going to demonstrate how we might get our Checkmate source control, get it configured to do some of the back-end processes. We'll take a look at our continuous integration server and see how that process works. So I'm back on my Windows OBI-EE developer workstation. And before I demonstrate how Checkmate and a continuous integration and delivery server can publish content to a Maven repository, I wanted to demonstrate how we could do that with our Checkmate application as well. I think it makes it a little easier to digest and understand exactly what's going on if we just investigate it from the Checkmate application. So this is that brokerage project that I configured in Checkmate previously in the last video. I'm going to open that up and I'm going to add a new card. We'll call this the publish card, or we'll use a publish card. And we're going to produce our first official release of our OBI content. I'm just going to do this or publish this straight to the desktop, but we could publish to an artifact or binary repository from here as well. execute that task, provide some credentials. And here's our task execution. That was successful. So here's the directory structure where that's getting published. And you can see it's our brokerage build publication. We'll dive into the different types of publications that Checkmate can publish for OBIEE in a future video. But right now we'll dive into this what's called the build publication. And you can see these are my previous versions that I published earlier today. Here is the 1.0.0 version I published just now. You can also see the Maven collateral files that it also produces as part of the output. That's so that Maven compatible processes can pull the right content when it needs to. So we'll go into the 1.0.0 folder, and that's really our distribution or publication file. I'm going to grab a copy of that real quick, throw it on the desktop so we can get into it, see what's in there. You can see our catalog, so we produced a catalog archive file, so we could use that to deploy to a downstream environment. Also in our repository, we built the binary repository. The build publication file or distribution file doesn't have as much content as our deploy distribution file, which we'll investigate in a later video. This is sort of the simplest distribution that we can make. Just an archive file of the catalog and a binary repository. So I'm back on my Mac and I want to investigate what's in our Git repository. So you saw me put the catalog and the MDS XML version of the repository in the last video. You saw me use the Checkmate application to commit all that. And since that time, I've added our Checkmate build script. Let me just add some syntax highlighting to make it just a little bit easier. So this is a configuration script or a DSL, domain-specific language script, to configure and define our back-end processes that will occur on the continuous integration server. So you can see the first thing we're doing is applying our Checkmate plugin. That's the Checkmate OBI plugin. I'm declaring the project version. So as you build new versions of your OBIE content, you would increment that version number. There are ways to automate that as well. You see our dependencies closure, and right now I have everything commented out of there. We will slowly uncomment some of that stuff in later videos so that we can show you how we can use declared dependencies to do regression testing, how we can use declared dependencies to build incremental patches to make it much easier to deploy to downstream environments. But at this point, we've pretty much got it pruned down to be just about the most simple build script that we can deploy. You see that we do have our analytics streams uncommented, so Checkmate automatically streams information about builds, about failed tests, etc., how long it took to run particular tasks. It also, as we'll see in later videos, we store all the different metadata and catalog changes so that we can report on them. We are streaming that content to the cloud. We'll get into that on another day. So you can see that we have that stuff set to true. And then we're also declaring our middleware home directory. That's for our backend build server or backend OBIE build server. And then our compatibility flag, what version of OBIEE do we want to, we're defining our backend build server, OBIE build server, what version it is. Checkmate is aware of the distinctions and all the different versions and how it would build, test, and deploy and promote on those different versions. And also I've commented out the publication of the bar file. We'll look at how Checkmate builds the bar file another day as well. So that's our build script pruned down to a very simplistic form at this point. Also, if we can take a look at, this is our CI server, or our continuous integration server, and this is Bamboo, again, part of the Atlassian suite. And here as well, I've got several of our tasks in this job disabled. This one and this one are around regression testing. We will uncomment those or enable those tasks at a later time on another video. We're also, we're going to simply build. So first off, we'll walk through it. First, we just make sure that everything's up. That's just a standard part of all of our build scripts. Check out some source code, and then we're going to build our binary repository, our catalog archive file. We're not going to do any regression testing at this point, so those are not enabled. We are going to publish our distribution file, so that task is enabled. And then our JUnit parser, that's again for regression testing, so we'll see that on another day. So this is again our sort of simplistic build script just for publishing content. And we're going to run that plan now. So we're back with a little fancy editing, so you didn't have to wait those 42 seconds for the completion of the job. You can see we have a successful build process for on our continuous integration server. And here is our, you notice that we do have an artifact for the archive file, but we're not currently building that, so that one doesn't exist. Let's just download that distribution file down to my Mac. There it is right there. Unzip that, take a look. We can see we have our catalog. We have our full catalog in the distribution file just in case we need it. But this is the archive file of the catalog. So that's an archive file containing just the shared folders and all the shared folders. We also have our binary repository, very similar to what we generated using the Checkmate app. At Red Pill Analytics, we use Amazon S3 to host our Maven repository. And so that's what we're looking at here is our demo Maven repository. So Maven 2 directory is actually the root of our Maven repository. So let's drill in there. We were producing OBI.EE content, so let's go in there. And now you see the 3 directories for the different types of distribution files that we can generate. We'll take a look at the deploy and the bar in later videos, as I've mentioned previously. It's the build distribution file that we generated today. So let's take a look at that. And we see just the single version, so the 1.0.0, which is the version of content that we produced today. If we had multiple versions of content, we would see directories for all of those different versions. So that gives you the ability to maintain an archive of your produced or built content from OBI.EE over time. We also see the different metadata XML files that are part of the overall Maven ecosystem. So let's drill into our 1.0.0 version of content. And that's our zip file that we saw. It's identical to the one that was captured there inside of the continuous integration server. So there it is. One more time, we'll take a look at the content in there. It's our catalog and our repository. So thanks very much for watching. Stay tuned for more videos that we'll be producing as part of our Checkmate tutorial series. And thanks as always for watching the Red Pill Analytics YouTube channel.